Welcome to the Programmatic Digest, a podcast dedicated to reviewing industry trends and latest news in the programmatic and ad tech world. I'm Ellen Parker, your host and Chief Programmatic Sensei of Ellen Parker Consulting, where we offer one-on-one coaching or a 6-month training and development program in programmatic media to fit you and your team's needs. So thank you for joining us. Remember to subscribe right below and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Programmatic Digest podcast. Mike, how are you doing today?
Ellen, I'm doing great. It's great to be with you.
I am excited to talk because we're going to talk about the future of programmatic media buying, but also we're going to talk about purchase-based insight and the predictive consumer behavioral patterns. We're going to talk about a lot of exciting things today. But before we get to that sexy talk, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are now, how you got to where you are at Affinity Solutions?
Sure. It's been a great long journey, long road. First third of my career was in media and publishing. I spent 20 years of my life with Forbes Media. Grew up across all the channels there.
Wow. Okay.
I am a man of a certain age, so I started selling face in magazines, if you can imagine.
So cool.
And then we, of course, evolved to digital, and then native, and then programmatic on the other side of that. So it's that 2/3 of my career in media. The last third of my career has been all in data and tech, MarTech and ad tech specifically. Mm-hmm. And then Affinity Solutions, we have this really high fidelity transaction data set. So it feels like the perfect worlds colliding. You get to bring all that experience together around how we can help brands achieve better outcomes.
That's really cool. So Affinity Solution, which is different than Affinity Answers.
That's correct.
What is, thank you for clarifying. What is Affinity Solution?
Yeah, so short version is, and we always like to talk about who we're helping first, right? Mm-hmm. We have this mission to help brands, in particular CMOs and the orbit that surrounds CMOs, mm-hmm. Make better bets by using predictive data. In our case, data is transaction data. Mm-hmm. We source the data through a 20-year loyalty relationship we've had with the credit card issuers and financial providers. Yeah, and it's a very virtuous relationship because we actually drive value back to the card holder, mm-hmm. and we have wide rights tied to consent. So we are allowed to responsibly use all this great data that we get every night on about 100 million cards, to solve some of the big problems that CMOs struggle with today, and really the burden of proof that they have to show the CFO in that organization or the C-suite or even the board that the great work that they're doing really is paying off for the enterprise. Gotcha. So it's very transactional data. That's correct.
Okay. So would you be considered, for the listeners and myself, would you be considered into, if we have to categorize you in the programmatic ecosystem, would you be considered a data provider?
We would be. That's one of the ways you could think about us. In fact, of course. Mm-hmm. We merchandise our data across the digital ecosystems today. We build audiences and syndicate those audiences across the platforms, the Trade Desk, LiveRamp, Mobi, others. We have direct relationships with all the large holdcos and their agencies. They use our data to derive insights for more predictive planning. And you think about using it across that ecosystem, from planning to outcomes to measurement. All that data and that data set and the derivative solutions we build from that data are active today across those partners.
Got it. So before we talk about media buying, mm-hmm. and how we can help our listeners, of course, I like to ask this question because we all have a different understanding of words. We use words differently, and words have a large meaning, a larger meaning than we even realize. So if you had to explain what you do or what programmatic media buying is to my niece, Mina, who is 7 years old, how would you do that? Okay, so I'm going to take the next 30 seconds to let you know about the reach frequency, which is, of course, you has asked me for, okay? And I've spent a lot of time crafting every single lesson just for you. Why should you even consider? And then I'm already pretty aware of what's going on in programmatic advertising. I love your podcast content. This is where I'm here. Cool, great. But you may know somebody that really wants to learn about programmatic advertising and don't know where to start, right? Most likely you've received training via your current job or via a previous job, right? You work for an agency, you work for a partner, a vendor in the industry, and they provided the training, right? Is that how you got here? Well, did you know that that's actually the only way to get training nowadays? Like, if for any one of our friends in the digital marketing world, it's really hard for them to really learn anything if they don't know who, where, and really what to look for. So the reach and frequency course is geared for those people. It's going to take you from 0 to 100, from fundamentals to how to run a successful programmatic media campaign, how to run a successful department if you wish to be a leader or lead a department in programmatic advertising. The reach and frequency course is for you. Okay, we talk about anything from fundamentals. We talk about anything from who are the key players in the industry. But the biggest thing is that I give you my recommendation, my feedback, my guides. I was a trader. I was a buyer for 8+ years, right? And I led teams of buyers. So I'm really, really, really good when it comes to running a programmatic advertising strategy, implementing, executing, optimizing, and reporting on, and then selling some more. So I'm really good at that. So yeah, you can probably get most of this training out there. Great. Don't only stop with my course, continue training, because that's what it's all about, right? But what you won't get anywhere else and you'll get with me is all of that experience I've been able to gather, you've been able to implement. Like, this is an interactive course for you to learn anything you should know about programmatic advertising, whether you're already working in it or you're trying to work in the industry. So check out the Reach and Frequency course, brought to you by me, your very own programmatic coach. I'm very grateful for this experience that I've gone through the last 2 years, and I'm here to teach you everything that I know. Check out reachandfrequency.live, reachandfrequency.live. And now back to the episode.
Good one. I have 5 kids and they were all 7 at one age. And
at one time.
I'm going to take myself in the Wayback Machine and get to those moments. I would probably reach into my wallet and say, Daddy has a credit card. Daddy has lots of credit cards, and this works like money. And when we go to the store, to the American Girl store, to buy you that doll, Daddy's going to use this credit card to pay for this. And because Daddy's going to use that credit card, the store gets to know a lot about Daddy. Gets to know
information. Yeah.
It gets the information about how much the purchase costs. How much did the doll cost today? They get to see that. They get to know that we're in our store in Novi, Michigan, that they get to see that. So they get to know some things about Daddy. And because they know those things, they can help us create more personalized experiences for you and me when we think about the next thing that you may want to buy after the American Girl doll.
That's pretty good. Okay, so the
I don't know. I think she'd still be going, what are you talking about, Dad? Just take the doll. Let's go.
I feel like 7-year-olds are smarter.
I'm dating myself.
Nowadays.
American Girl probably isn't even a thing anymore. So
it's all good. It's all good. This is a judgment-free zone. At least the recording. Offline, we might, I might message you on the side about things. But well, great. Well, thank you for explaining that. I like to hear how everybody explains it. It's very interesting. It's very interesting how everybody understands, comprehend things. So let's talk about the future of programmatic media buying. So for our listeners again that may not be familiar with it, what is Affinity Solutions definition or stand of media buying before we even talk about the future? Like, what are some of the things that you do, or what are media buying? And then what are some of the things you do in this process of media buying? Because 50% of the audience are media buyers, traders, and the other 50% are actually in the C-suite level in a leading or leadership position.
Sure.
So for both of our audience, how would you define media buying? And how would you define like how Affinity Solution position themselves?
So I'm going to try to be concise and clear. I think about media buying really as a continuum. Ultimately, there's work that happens before someone decides to buy anything in our lives,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We
that's pretty
research
good.
it, we plan it, and initially, you want to be able to develop audiences and a strategic plan based on what you're trying to accomplish, either if you're the buyer for your client or if you are the client for your own business. What are the outcomes we're seeking? And in that stage, the question is, do I have the insights to inform a plan that's predictive? Can I make those more
Mm,
predictive bets that I talked about earlier? Can I validate those things before I decide to spend any money?
yep.
That's a really important question. And I, by the way, I don't mean to get off topic here. I do think we have the benefit, and you live in this, right? We live from inflection point to inflection point in this business, which keeps us all on our toes and interested. And I think we're living through a couple of those right now, right? And here we go, right? The deprecating cookie and uh,
Yeah.
and where we go next. We'll talk about that perhaps, and then
Hmm.
of course the pressure on the legacy rating systems and how they're having to evolve, which invites innovative new ideas.
Hmm.
So the future of media planning and buying, I believe, will increasingly put pressure on predictability and proof because CMOs are under pressure to make better bets. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And oh my gosh, it must be really exciting or maybe challenging. I like to flip the coin and see the positive. So I'm gonna say exciting. It must be exciting to be in a position that you are now with all of these updates, right? If we pull in the conversation in the future of programmatic media, I'm sorry, media buying, how do you even position certain conversation with a brand, right? Or with an agency that maybe don't have that in their focus at the moment, even though they should, everybody should. How do you have those conversations? How do you brace those conversations? Like, oh, you know what? Like being in business development versus being in media buying, those are two different worlds. How do you make sure to like build that trust, that relationship with your future client or your current clients to really set the stage for what type of solution, no pun intended, you have for them? Like,
Right.
what do
So,
you say to
so
them?
I'm,
What do you say to
I mean,
them, for
first
instance?
of all, we start with humility, right? I'll use the word that you used earlier, and you convert that to empathy, which requires some understanding of the industry that they're in and the problems that they're trying to
That's good.
solve.
Mhm.
And if we do that authentically and in a genuine way,
Mhm.
with expertise, then you would hope at that moment there's some disarming that happens, and we're invited to have a conversation
Mhm.
that's really open and collaborative. And the reality is, if you have those insights walking in, and I'm having a discussion with a brand, and I'm able to say, you have a lot of information about customers that you have, your customers, when they're interacting with you in your stores and on your websites. Yes, I do. But it starts to get blurry when you contemplate access to information that shows how they're spending their money when they aren't engaged with you, when they're spending money across categories, either directly in your category with your competitors or adjacent categories that may inform lifestyle habits that could drive and derive better insights. And the acknowledgement is always, yes, you're right. That allows us then to lead them to our solutions, which provides data that allows them to open that aperture and
Mhm.
see purchase behavior of these consumers across the ecosystem, not just within their stores and websites. When you're able to open the aperture to see that behavior, it unlocks all kinds of high level use cases for better planning, better predictive, high fidelity audiences, those things that you can create with the acknowledgement that I'm going to know more about the behavior of
Mm,
my end user customer and create solutions and ultimately experiences based on that insight.
yeah. So it's more educating, it's more really nurturing, like, oh, this is happening right now. This is how we can help, but this is also what you should know.
The last thing we talk about is our solution, by the way.
Mhm.
I mean, if you have ultimately, we want to lead them there because we do believe we have a solution that's incredibly unique in the marketplace, and we can fulfill that promise on the other end. But that's the last thing we talk about.
Okay, so talking about the solution, right? Because I think one of our topic here was the power of purchase-based insight. So how are like consumer behavioral patterns in general tying into that whole power of purchase-based insight? So what I'm asking is that I think we need to break down a little bit more what that means first, and also
Yeah, yeah,
how important or why, right? Explain the why everyone on the call should consider looking for those type of audience segmentation in their media buying, whether with Affinity Solutions or not. Like, what
right.
are the importance of understanding just the consumer behavior?
So you think historically audiences are built on the back of age and gender, and then some lifestyle indicators to create audiences that we target. Our thesis, our innovation that we're bringing to bear is the what if. It's rhetorical because we know that we can't believe we can.
Mhm.
If we can start to create metrics that tie to things like purchasers in the home and level of spend, and you're able then at that point, if you contemplate program and the qualification against an audience, it's possible that program A and program B might look very similar
Mhm.
in with regard to the indices and the uplift that you would get by targeting those programs wherever they may be across whatever channels. The what if we could effectively score those programs for level of spend or purchasers in those households, and then program A
Mhm.
looks a lot better than program B because the people watching this program have a higher propensity to buy the products that you're trying to sell.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, the decisions you make about not just how much you advertise, but who and where you advertise would uh, conceivably would look a lot different. That's our thesis. And you can only do that if you have a signal quality data set that covers those transactions that we talked about. Like ours, you're right, there's others, but ours is, we get ours every day on over 100 million credit cards. So you think about the speed of programmatic today, our data set actually keeps up where most other data sets would lag. And you'd have to wait. If you think about measurement, you would have to wait weeks, certainly if not months, into the campaign to make some decisions about optimization and attribution.
Interesting. And so I like what you said because most of the clients I work with are in consulting from a consulting perspective, like giving them a recommendation. I've worked with a lot of people. This is what they want to do, or just training their people on how to maximize the partnership they already have existent or the new ones. And one of the questions I encourage everybody to ask is not only now, thanks to Sarah Poley at Hearth and Science, it's not only asking about cookie deprecation, how is your partner getting ready for it and helping you get ready for it, but also like to all signal loss. So when a client of your, oh, let me just ask like for anyone interested in Affinity Solutions, what is your perspective on cookie deprecation? How is that even affecting the way you guys are gathering that data, segmenting those audiences? Like what is your recommendation when a client asks like, what about them Google's cookies that's going away? Like, what do you have to say to this? I have a lot to say, but like what is something you want to tell the
Okay,
people
we had an
out there?
honest conversation about cookies. They were never great, right? But it's it's what we had, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
flexible, targetable, trackable, all those things it did change, certainly transform the way that we thought about media. But you look at you look at other studies out there, and consumers aren't overwhelmed by personalized experiences with brands today. They're like, they're kind of left wanting. And if we think, and maybe we've over relied on cookies too long to be that key to personalization, I don't, I think they're arguably, even if it weren't deprecating, we would be at a point that we would be contemplating a different way
Hmm.
because we too oftentimes are leaving consumers wanting for more
Yeah.
from the brands that they love. because cookies just don't do it. So ultimately, you see, I think we see the continuum swinging back to first party data clearly, and potentially the supply side of the equation. Our data is all first party data. It's collected that way. We have access to it. It's all deterministically matchable on a number of different keys. That would be really important. And I had a meeting with a large big box retailer recently, and one of their top 3 initiatives was we're strategically focused on stabilizing and extending our first party data strategy.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the future. And then figuring out I'm going to use the word trade on that, not as a currency, but how do you use that in a smart way, developing your own brand keys? Who do you work with for identity? All those things will become increasingly important in the post-cookie world.
I'm Ellen Parker. What if I tell you for $75 a month, you get to join a community with other fellow programmatic ninjas, successful ones that are looking to grow, ones that are looking to share what they know and learn from others. Would you be interested? And I get to coach you through your transformation, coach you through the skill set that you need to know in order to get what you want to get. Either is that raise, either is that promotion, either is even like a different job, right? So I'm not a recruiter, y'all. I'm not a recruiter. I'm one of you. I've done what you've been doing for at least 10 years, and I'm here to help you. And in the midst of things, some of my friends from the Programmatic Digest podcast, some of those guest hosts get to come. How many times have you listened to any other podcast and say, dang, I wish they could elaborate on this, or I could ask this? Well, you get a chance to do that in the community. Just for $75 a month, we meet weekly, we grow weekly, we learn weekly, we share authentically, just being ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, try the first call on me, DM me, send me information, head over to the programmaticmeetup.com. I know you'll be able to find it anyway. So see you next Friday.
That's really cool because I want to highlight something you said, like you're in book, because I'm a bookworm. But what Mike said, if you guys missed it, is that all of their data are first party data. They're all deterministic data. And for any buyers out there, that's like a light bulb should be lighting up at the moment on how to reach out to Mike or somebody at Affinity Solutions, because we are still, like, as a buyer, like somebody trading on the campaign on a daily basis, we're still struggling to really understand, like, where is some of this stuff coming from and how was this stuff even packaged to us, right? So deterministic data and first party data are part of the solution with cookie deprecation, but they're not the only thing. So with that said, the first thing you should think about now is like, oh, well, we should implement something like that and still test something else. So you mentioned, you didn't mention it, but I thought about contextual targeting, or even like clarifying other channels, like really making sure that your measurement is really, you got to demystify some things. You got to be able to see what you're doing out there. So I really appreciate the fact that you're not cookie reliant, and that first party is to some extent, but not in this third party cookie reliant, because it will impact performance in the long run, like especially from a trader perspective, especially from a buyer's perspective, especially for anybody in the media buying realm. So let me ask you this before we move into the closing segment. If there's 3 things you want everyone listening, let's say if they won the lottery and they decided not to finish to listen to the rest of the podcast, what is 3 things you really want them to remember? 3 things from our conversation, I would say. That's easier.
Yeah, I always go to coach mode on this and less about self, but something that I think would help them. The first one says easy, does hard, right? I would stay curious, stay open, stay curious. I don't think any one company has all the answers today. You just said it, right? We have to be open-minded to a number of different things coming together, and our ability to challenge that and to stay curious in that pursuit. That would be thing number 1.
Okay.
Thing number 2, challenge the industry, right? I believe in us, and I think we have a very unique, well-differentiated solution that could be powerfully transformative.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone's saying some version of that. I think in the world of data, the great thing about data is we live in a meritocracy. The best data usually wins. And if it is high fidelity and extensible and scalable, then that generally, so test us, right, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Challenge us to prove
Mm-hmm.
that what we say is in fact true. And then the third thing I would say is invest in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I have enough gray in my beard to know that if you invest in yourself over time and the skills required to be successful, it's not all science.
Mm-hmm.
And invest in yourself, the techniques, training with someone like Ellen, right? Make sure that you continue to sharpen that saw. Those would be the three things that I would ask your audience to think about.
Yo, that's so dope. Stay curious, be open-minded, and invest in yourself. Everyone listening know by now, hopefully, that I'm very, very big on self-development, and investing in your self-development is a must. And it does not need to be only from a professional perspective. Like literally, since I've been on this journey of entrepreneurship and building my business, every self-develop investment that I've made in my self-development has had nothing to do on how to, understand some of the stuff I do on a daily basis. It's been on the discovery of who I am and what I can do and my values. And I'm still on the discovery. So
Right on.
love what you
Good for you.
said. Yeah, I encourage anybody, like pick up a book that has nothing to do with programmatic and read something that you can continue transferring in your day-to-day and beyond your job today. Because your job does not define you. You define your job and you define the rest of it, right? A job comes and go, like my grandma would say. So on that note, like I would be really curious, right, to see, to hear rather, what is like one of those skills that you've acquired before working in digital, right? That you maybe had no idea would be so beneficial? Because I train a lot of people that have no experience in marketing or programmatic advertising. And I try to pinpoint those skill sets that they've developed while working even at a Target, at a Starbucks, that they can pull in the digital in the digital world. And it's always the first time is always like, no, I don't know nothing. And I'm like, you have 6 years of experience all of this.
Yeah.
You can pull some skills that I promise you. So like for anybody listening, what are like one or two skills that you were like, oh, I still use this. Like I still do this thanks to that experience I've gathered before digital or before the programmatic world.
I'm going to sound a little old school here, but
Go
I
ahead.
have
We're ready for it.
virtual. In fact, I think the virtual world puts even more pressure on the ability to communicate clearly and well. So
Ah,
invest in yourself, get some presentation training, be
ooh,
broken down on video, see yourself.
yeah.
For me, I was the lead singer in a band, so I was always comfortable on a stage. But that serves me really well still to this day in conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak clearly in a compelling way? And
Mm,
can you write well?
mm-hmm.
So communication skills, speaking clearly, perhaps in an inspirational way, even, and being able to communicate well in the written form, still timeless to this day.
Oh my gosh, that is such a good. That's just such a good thing to say because, like, again, going back to those entry level juniors, like, what are those skill set that you can manage? I always say, like, you gotta have a good presentation skill. You gotta be able to write what you're doing for that person. And sometimes it's not about throwing fancy words because we love a fancy words in our industry. It's like really communicating to that 7-year-old in that in your audience because we want to talk to that person and we want to make sure they understand. So I love what you just said, and I'm not going to let you go over the fact you said that you're a lead singer in a band. Like I usually ask for a fun fact, but we're going to use that one as a fun fact. What was the name of the band? Where can
The name of the
we
band was
buy this
Fully Restored. Fully Restored
fully
was the name of the
restored?
band.
Okay, and what
Yeah.
kind of music?
So we were a blues rock band, but we also did a lot of original composition. I wrote all the lyrics in the band and collaborated with the guitar players. So I mean, you hit on it earlier. I just want to reinforce the fact: have creative pursuits in your life. Get away from the keyboard and the screen and do other things to stimulate curiosity and creativity. Those are really important.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for dropping by, Mike. If anybody has questions, how can they get a hold of you?
So they can reach me at mwoods@affinitysolutions.com. I'm at Mike A. Woods on Twitter, and I'm Mike A. Woods on LinkedIn. So those are the three ways they can reach me.
And all of Mike's information will be in the show notes down in the in the description. I'm so used to saying job description. In the show notes, the description part of the podcast or on YouTube. So make sure you reach out to Mike for any question, Affinity Solution, or just to get some good wisdom, because I got some major ones today. I wanted to ask one final question, but you dropped so many wisdom. So I'm going to
ask me. I'll give you a great book. I was ready for the book.
Yeah. Okay, tell me a book. I love books, so tell me.
My all-time favorite book, and I never read book more than once. I've read this book twice and listened to it, is by Ryan Holiday. It's called The Obstacle is the Way.
The Obstacle is the Way.
It's based on ancient Stoic philosophy from Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus and those cats. Super cool. Really modern and provocative. It's one of those sort of centering, grounding books that remind us that there is the way forward. In some cases, you have to push on through, right?
Yep.
You might not be able to go around or under or over. You might have to go through it. It's a great book, very inspiring.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm gonna add it to my list, which gets updated very often because I go through them. I even see another book that's called from him that's called Stillness is the Key, and another one, Courage is Calling. So it seems like this guy's pretty dope. You read them all?
I'm going to use your word. They're really dope. Yeah, pretty dope. And he's young. He's only like 35. And I have to remind myself that, just incredible story
That's really cool.
About his arc and the stuff he writes. I like the way he writes, and it speaks to me.
Okay. Well, that's it. That's cool. The next one. It's going to be added. And then maybe in the last 2-3 weeks, I'll be like emailing you about like, yo, by the way, this was dope.
Hit me up.
Yeah, I sure will. Well, thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Ellen, thank you so much.